Hey everybody, JB here. About to tackle a project on my friend Boris here. My made in Mexico Fender PBass that I picked up rather inexpensively several years ago through a pawn shop in Texas because the poor kid had a busted neck. In other words, somebody over-tightened the truss rod. So what ended up happening was, after picking the actual body and the electronics up fairly inexpensively, I had to replace the neck with a new Fender made in Mexico neck, and played it and enjoyed this bass for quite a long time. What it developed later in life, as you can see, I've already cut the strings off. I figured people can figure that out. What ended up happening was one of the pots or the pickups in this baby just have given up the ghost. So they're probably pretty old. The original body was from 2003. Got a fair amount of use. And what we're going to do is do a breakdown on this beastie. This is going to be done in chapters so that I can kind of track what's going on and conduct the work and record what's happening. But I've recently ordered a brand new set of pickups, and we'll talk about those in more detail. They're the Giza Butler pickup kit. So when I throw that in, of course, Giza Butler, iconic and awesome bass god from Black Sabbath. What we're going to wind up with is a much more deep, growling, resonant sound out of this than I could. What's happening now is the A chord pickup is just dead. So, and it's intermittent. That's even worse. So while I'm playing it, it just drops out and, creates a lot of headache for me. So the other part of the project that we're going to do is I'm going to be going and looking into, at a local auto body shop, having the body painted a really sweet gunmetal gray, the actual outer body, the black, piece with some sparkle lacquer. I'm hoping that works out. So what I will do for the majority of this work today is I'm also going to pop the neck off from here so that I can actually not only hopefully get that work done, but also be ready in case the auto body shop says, yeah, sure, bring it down. So I'm not going to remove the bridge plate yet, in case they say no. But for the sake of all the other work that I have to do, popping the neck off will make this a lot easier to sit on a desktop so I can record this for you. So that's the goal, which will, for today, which will involve popping the neck off, which is just as simple as removing that cover plate. There's 4 bolt screws. The neck bolts off. That will release that. Then going to be removing the 13 cover plate screws to get this beautiful purple plate off, which I plan to recycle on another one of my Penguins. I have another black and white guitar that I'm just going to throw this plate on because I love it. It's just pretty. And I picked up some new Pickguards to test drive on this as well. But the real goal of this, of course, is the repair of the pickups and restoring this thing to playability. So we'll get started in just a minute or two. Okay, so something I had forgotten that is kind of unique to Fender guitars, especially Fender basses or P basses, is they install at the factory a ground cable that sits underneath the bridge plate, which is right here. See this groove that they route through the bass body? And you can see it comes out of that tiny hole there, and then connects up to this, to the volume control pot. There you go. Okay, it's always a black wire. I've had some reason to find this to be very interesting. And again, I'm not a luthier. I don't do this for a living. You know, I'm sure someone else has a video that describes this much better, but this cable basically is supposed to be presented in just such a way that it sits with the ground cable exposed right underneath the bridge plate. And as you can imagine, that's not exactly, in my opinion, the most scientific way, or from an engineering perspective, to ensure that you get good grounding capability, because we're talking about a very, very slight tolerance and making sure that this cable sits in the right spot. So a little group of epoxy is probably in order. The interesting thing is the new pickup kits that I'm getting are a solderless set. So what I intend to do with this is leave this cable in place for this practical journey, and because I'm not going to reuse these pots, I'm just going to cut this off with a pair of diagonal cutters. That's what these are. Just going to snip the ground and leave it in place for now, so that I remember that that's where that all goes when it comes down to reassembly. And what I'll wind up more than likely doing when I get the pot kit is replacing this ground cable altogether. But for now, we're at the point where you can see we're down to just a couple of connections, and these are coming from the pickups. And you can no doubt tell there's two sets of pickups and only two cables, and that is because they daisy chain these together to get the connectivity that we need. As we discussed, no fancy bolts. I'm going to remove the, just by loosening that, you can usually get it thumb loose. Doesn't take a whole lot of torque. I'm going to remove the input jack. I'm going to be very careful to save any parts. Even though I'm not going to reuse this, I am going to save these parts because you never know, right? So I'm saving the washer that goes on the outer plate of the pickguard and the bolts, because you never know. It's good to have spares. What I try to do when I'm doing this is just get a finger on the component behind it while I'm loosening those, so that you don't or just start having it spinning around and breaking wires, or loosening solder joints, which will also be cause for pause. But we're down to just two, one more connector, and then the bridge. But this should free up the plate and get it out of the way, which is really what I want to do. So we can see the rest of the innards in here. Sorry if this is boring, but a friend of mine asked me, or said that it would be cool if I made this video. Shout out to Danny. How you doing, buddy? Hope you find this interesting. And again, as I had mentioned, and we'll take a close-up look at some of these once I get the bridges out, or the pickups out. This is all the original electronic. I never replaced these when I redid the neck, and I'm not entirely bummed out about that, because there's our pickguard has been removed. And if anybody's interested in this cool purple pickguard, I did get it from a website called dragonfireguitars.com. As you can see, they shipped it with a nice cool little sticker on the back. So the camera well, apparently it's having a hard time focusing on that. But nonetheless, I'll put that in the annotation. They chose to just put and you can see here, this is a very important thing. It's probably hard to tell, but there, now you can see the two-tone nature of this. This is a metal grounding tape that they put on their pickguard. A lot of the pickguards I've pulled off in the past, I don't see this. And this is very important. It creates an electromagnetic interference shielding, EMF, which EMF is possible or can create a ton of problems for electronics. If you don't have good EMF shielding, you are going to have hum, hiss. You might even pick up, believe it or not, odd radio transmissions from passing automobiles, vehicles, things of that nature. Can be very, very unnerving. You know, nobody wants to hear their equipment hissing and howling unless they're actually pushing that through some type of a device for that specific purpose. So we want to be able to limit that potential. And that's also worth noting when I get these puppies out. Now I'm taking on getting the pickups out as well, that the innards inside of here, which you can probably no doubt already see, have not been shielded. So there was no way to eliminate any extra electronic interference coming into this device. And we're going to fix that with some copper shielding tape that I've ordered through Amazon. And in essence, what we're going to do is build what's called a Faraday cage around this entire component. And as you can see, this is one gnarly screw. Luckily, I know that the new kit is shipping with some brand new screws for the new pickups, which is great. Which may have also been the reason why I brought these little mini vice grips into the project, because I half remember this thing being a mess when I was trying to just adjust the pickup heights during setup on this after I installed in the neck. But as I said, I believe this poor guitar was not very well cared for, and certainly that's okay, because someone else's abuse led to my gain, and that works out okay. I'm not going to complain about it. For what I paid for this thing, it was quite a steal. But yeah, you can see this screw is not only broached, but it's bent. Which adjusting these, as you can see, they're on springs, which you will see very clearly in a second once I get this out. Wow. Yeah, that's not too cool. So these particular devices, the pickups, that detect magnetism in the field around it, and vibration, and that's how they fire off and tell the guitar that in fact a string has been struck. So they pick up all of that. You can see it's pretty dusty and dirty in here. I actually have the original Fender serial number in there, which is cool as hell. So it tells me again how I can track the age of this body. These are the actual pickups, and as I told you earlier, they're daisy chained together so that the signals pass through. I suspect that, again, and as you can see here, and this is important too, what a lot of people don't know, what I was getting at earlier is these sit up on, generally on springs. And Fender didn't actually install springs in these, they used foam, okay, little foam blocks. And these little foam blocks act as the mechanism to control the height, right, of the pickup. As you can see, it depresses down rather nicely in relation to the cavity of the body and the height of the strings, which we then use to balance out and attune the guitar to the correct I believe the word is called attenuation, but I would have to go back and look at that. I know what it does, I just don't know the actual term. So taking a good look at this, and Danny, specifically your thoughts, because you're concerned about hum. Here is where, in my experience with electronics, which is not broad, I don't do it for a living, but I do know what bad solder joints can do to you, right? So I'm sorry, I'm trying to get this to focus on this piece. Not sure why it's being such a pain in the neck. But any one of these areas where a wire connects to a big gob of solder, as you can see here, over time these can loosen up. And it's a shame because this one, you can see somebody did a horrible job bonding this white wire, which comes from the back of the actual pot lead, to the blue control, which is coming from the pickup. It's exposed. It looks like they just wrapped it around really quickly and did, come on camera, focus. I think it's still in one of those autofocus moments. I don't know that I can do anything about that. But I'll take some close-up pictures of it and get it into the video for you. But it's just a real crap job. And what does a bass guitar do? Well, it creates a lot of vibration, right? So if you imagine we're thumping away at our bass, and if you play hard like I do, I play very with my fingers. I'm a plucker, and I pull and bang and yank, and this wire is basically just fiddling and moving about. That could be 9/10 of what's going on with my issue, because guess where that wire goes? Right to the pickup, right? So that blue cable is going to be giving me intermittent shorting and probably knocking that whole pickup out. So rather than worry about it anymore, I decided to replace these with, again, the units I mentioned. This is worth noting again from a workmanship perspective. If you notice, this particular foam is completely flat, as it should be. This one is loaded with grooves because the factory decided to leave and do fast work and left the cables sitting in front, which would of course create another effect, which would mean that this is not going to give me the amount of range of adjustment that I really want, because it becomes, as you can see, sort of permanent in that foam over time. It's just like a memory foam, the harder version. But like I said, we're going to be keeping all this electronic kit because one never knows if I might need a spare part or piece. But effectively, right now, the breakdown is done. Alright, so we have nothing but an empty cavity, with the exception of that one piece of ground cable hanging out of the back. So the next thing is to get this thing outside on the compressor, blow it out, clean it out, get rid of all this dust, which might be lacquer primer, it looks like, of some kind. Either that, or maybe this thing was used to smuggle cocaine into the country. I don't know. There's a lot of weird white powder in there. But nonetheless, it's all going to go out into the driveway. Might just be, oh, you know what it is? It looks like it's polish residue. That's what it is. So don't call the DEA. I'm not sitting on a pound of ancient cocaine coming out of Mexico. It's just the polish lacquer dust. Yep, that's all it is. So I guess at one point in time somebody did decide they wanted to clean it and keep it nice. But hopefully, again, when we see this again, it'll be a beautiful gunmetal gray with some sparkle lacquer finish to it, and it's going to make the new pickguards that I picked really pop. The only thing I'm going to make sure that I do is tape off this particular section, just like Fender did before they painted and lacquered it in the new colors, so that I can preserve the original serial number marker on the body. And for now, that's the end of this part of the process, but we'll pick it back up when I get all the new electronics and find out the disposition of the body. But that's the breakdown. Thanks for watching. We'll pick it up in the next phase. Okay, so this is what I was trying to show you in the main video. I apologize for shaky cam here, but you can see the just terrible job here of soldering this unit together and how the cabling and the wiring is exposed, frayed, banded, gooped, and now, as you can see, and this is why I was suspecting this thing might have had some water damage. I couldn't see this when I was looking at it earlier. There's a lot of rust that's formed up on the back of this pot. And we know that can't be good. But yeah, if you look at this, that is just the sickest, nastiest solder job I've ever seen. For what they charge for these, I can't say that this was original Fender work, for all we know. And that's the line where I cut that off. But for all we know, this could have been aftermarket. But this is a good example of where you're going to get not only signal loss on what were probably, and original components that are the correct ones to have in there. But when you do a soldering job like this, see, at least on this one, they kind of got most of the solder on that wire joint, right? It's a little loose. But when you have loose connections like this, what you do is you just inherently open up the opportunity for it to become a source of signal loss, or an antenna to pick up interference. So that would be another reason why we want to eliminate that as much as possible. The ground connection, or the input jack connection, looks fairly clean, other than age, and again, a significant amount of rust. But there again, there's another one of those. Look at that. So I would say a large amount of that blue wire connecting up to that input isn't even connecting to the actual input blade. So we're probably not even looking at any kind of real signal quality there at all. Okay, waiting for the new parts.